Welcome back to the Elderly Health Physician, where we bring you the wisdom of Korean medicine combined with the best of modern science to help you thrive after 60. If you have ever woken up at 2 or 3 in the morning and simply lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking nothing of it, and waiting to fall back asleep, today's episode is going to permanently change how you see that moment. Because what happens inside your brain during those silent nighttime awakenings is not nothing. It is not harmless. And according to decades of neurological research, it may be one of the most quietly destructive things that happen to the aging brain. Joining me today, as always, is Korea's oldest practicing physician, Dr. Henry Lee. He has spent over 40 years treating seniors and studying the ancient principles of Korean medicine that have kept generations living strong past the age of 90. Doctor, welcome back.
Thank you, John. And I want to say from the very beginning of this conversation that I chose this topic deliberately, not because it is dramatic, but because it is one of the most underestimated threats to brain health in people over 60, and almost no one is talking about it clearly. People associate brain damage with strokes, with falls, with diagnosed disease. But the quiet, repeated damage that happens on an ordinary Tuesday night when someone wakes at 3 in the morning, checks the time, and tries to go back to sleep, that is the kind of damage that accumulates over years without announcing itself. And by the time it announces itself as memory loss, as confusion, as a personality that has slowly, imperceptibly changed. This is the conversation I have been wanting to have for a long time. People over 60 wake up at night more than they used to and assume it is simply aging. Something you accept, a nuisance, not a danger. That is exactly the assumption I want to correct today. Waking up at night after 60 is not simply aging. It is a signal from your brain, and how you respond to it and how often it happens matters enormously for what your brain looks like 10 years from now. Today, I am going to walk you through 7 things your brain experiences every single time you wake up at night. The first 3 are processes that begin within seconds of waking. The next 2 will surprise even people who have been reading about brain health for years. And the final 2 are the most important, because they are about what you can actually do. As I always say, understanding the mechanism is the first step. The solution becomes obvious once you understand what is actually happening. The first thing, and the one I consider the foundation of this entire conversation, is the shutdown of the brain's self-cleaning system. Now, most people have never heard of the glymphatic system. It was discovered by a Danish neuroscientist named Maiken Nedergaard at the University of Rochester, and the discovery was only published in 2013. It is younger than the smartphone. This tells you how recently science understood what is actually happening inside your brain while you sleep. Here is what the glymphatic system is. The brain is the only organ in the body that has no conventional lymphatic drainage. The rest of your body uses lymphatic vessels to collect waste and flush it out. The brain cannot do that because the brain is enclosed in a rigid skull, and the lymphatic architecture that works in your arm or your liver would cause dangerous pressure inside the skull. So the brain evolved its own ingenious alternative. During deep sleep, specifically during slow-wave sleep, the cells that surround your brain's blood vessels, called astrocytes, physically shrink. They shrink by nearly 60%. This shrinking opens up channels in the spaces around your blood vessels. Cerebrospinal fluid then rushes through those channels, flowing from the arteries toward the veins, essentially washing through the brain tissue like a river through a valley. It picks up the toxic proteins that your neurons have been producing all day: amyloid beta, tau, metabolic waste, and it carries them out. A study published in the journal Science that accompanied Nedergaard's original research showed that this clearance was more than twice as efficient during sleep as during wakefulness. And what that means in practical terms is this: every night that your brain enters deep, uninterrupted slow-wave sleep, it is completing its cleaning cycle. And every time you wake up at night, that cycle stops. Not slows down. Stops. The moment you transition from deep sleep to wakefulness, even a partial, half-conscious wakefulness, norepinephrine is released into the brain. Norepinephrine is the brain's alertness signal. And new research published in 2024 in the journal Cell Reports showed that when norepinephrine levels rise in the brain, the blood vessels contract. And when the blood vessels contract, those channels between the blood vessels and the brain tissue close. The river stops. The cleaning crew walks off the job. Not because there is nothing left to clean, but because the alarm went off. A study published in the journal Molecular Psychiatry in 2024, following 72 older adults using brain imaging and sleep monitoring simultaneously, found that poor sleep quality was directly linked to reduced glymphatic system activity. And the people with the most disrupted sleep showed measurable weakening of the brain network connections involved in memory, specifically in the middle temporal gyrus and the parahippocampal region. These are not abstract statistics. These are measurable brain changes in living people caused by fragmented sleep. I had a patient once, a 67-year-old retired engineer from Seoul. He came to me not because he was forgetting things, but because his wife had noticed he seemed quieter, less himself over the previous 2 years. He had been waking 2 or 3 times every night for what he estimated was 5 or 6 years. He had attributed it to age. When we discussed his sleep in detail, it became clear that his brain had been denied complete cleaning cycles for half a decade. We addressed the root causes of his nighttime awakenings over 6 months. His wife noticed changes within weeks. He described it as the fog lifting. The second thing the brain experiences when you wake up at night is a stress response in a structure that almost no one knows about. It is called the locus coeruleus. In Latin, that means the blue spot. It is a tiny cluster of neurons in the brainstem. We are talking about a structure that contains fewer than 50,000 neurons in a human brain, that contains 86 billion neurons total. And yet this tiny blue spot is the sole source of norepinephrine for the entire brain. Every part of the cortex, the prefrontal cortex where you make decisions, the hippocampus where you form memories, the amygdala where you process fear, every one of those regions receives its norepinephrine from this single small cluster. Now here's what is critical for anyone over 60 to understand. Research from Brock and colleagues, published in the journal Acta Neuropathologica, showed that the locus coeruleus is the first place in the entire brain where tau tangles begin to form. Not the hippocampus, not the cortex. The locus coeruleus decades before any clinical symptom of Alzheimer's disease appears. Alzheimer's does not begin in the memory center. It begins in this tiny brainstem structure that is being quietly overworked every single time you wake up at night. And the reason nocturnal awakenings matter so much in this context comes from a study published in the Journal of Neuroscience in 2024. Researchers showed that chronic sleep fragmentation increases what they call norepinephrine turnover in the locus coeruleus, meaning the locus coeruleus is being forced to fire repeatedly to produce more norepinephrine because every awakening demands an alertness signal. And when the locus coeruleus is chronically overworked, the metabolic stress of that overwork activates an enzyme called asparagine endopeptidase, which cleaves the tau protein and the amyloid precursor protein into toxic fragments. Furthermore, the research group led by Maxime van Egru at Maastricht University, published in the journal Annals of Neurology, showed that locus coeruleus degeneration, measured by the loss of the blue pigment that gives it its name, was associated with increasingly fragmented sleep patterns an average of 7 years before any clinical symptom of cognitive decline appeared. 7 years of silent damage. Silent because no alarm sounds, no pain is felt, nothing is announced. The third thing is something that Korean medicine recognized through observation long before Western neurology could explain it. The connection between disrupted nighttime sleep and what we now call silent brain ischemia. This is the third effect of nocturnal awakenings, and in many ways it is the most immediately dangerous because it is the most invisible. Silent brain ischemia means tiny areas of the brain quietly losing their blood supply, sustaining small injuries without producing any of the symptoms we associate with a stroke. No facial drooping, no sudden speech difficulty, no one-sided weakness, just silence. And yet these lesions accumulate, and they accumulate in a specific pattern that is detectable on brain magnetic resonance imaging. A study published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society, following 136 community-dwelling older adults in Japan, found something that I consider one of the most underreported findings in sleep medicine. Older adults who regularly woke up before 5 in the morning, regardless of whether they complained of insomnia, were significantly more likely to have what are called paraventricular white matter lesions on their brain scans. Not the people who said they felt tired. Not the people who said they were struggling. All people who simply woke up early. The ones who had no idea anything was wrong. And the Rotterdam Scan Study, one of the largest population-based brain imaging studies ever conducted, published in the journal Stroke, followed 1,077 non-demented adults aged 60 to 90. Those with silent brain infarcts on magnetic resonance imaging, lesions they did not know existed, had a stroke risk 5 times higher over the following 4 years compared to those without these lesions. 5 times. And neither the patients nor their families knew the lesions were there. The mechanism involves the fragile small vessels of the white matter. These vessels, called penetrating arteries, are the smallest blood vessels in the brain and the most sensitive to repeated pressure fluctuations. Every time a person transitions from deep sleep to wakefulness, blood pressure rises, even briefly. In a healthy 30-year-old, these micro spikes in blood pressure are easily absorbed by flexible vessel walls. In someone over 60, whose vessel walls have stiffened from decades of reduced nitric oxide production, these micro spikes stress the vessel wall with each awakening. Over 10 years of repeated nocturnal awakenings, the cumulative damage to these tiny vessels produces the white matter lesions the Japanese researchers found. Lesions visible on imaging. Lesions that nobody felt. Lesions that silently tripled and quintupled stroke risk. The people most at risk are not the ones lying awake in obvious distress. They are the ones who wake at 3 in the morning, drink a glass of water, and fall back asleep feeling like nothing happened. That person, repeated 10,000 times over 12 years, is the person with the most accumulated silent damage.
You know, doctor, conversations like this one make me think about something I came across a while back. It is called the Senior Body Reset After 60. I have to be honest, when I first found it, I was not expecting much, but it completely changed how I think about aging. It covers exactly what we talk about on this show: how to reset your body's natural rhythms after 60. Better sleep, stronger circulation, sharper memory, more energy throughout the day. And it does all of that through daily habits, not medications. No complicated routines. Just clear, practical steps backed by the same kind of medical thinking we explore in every episode. If you are someone who wants to take what you hear here and actually put it into action, this is a resource worth looking into. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment below. Now, doctor, please continue.
The fourth thing is an age-specific vulnerability that changes everything about how we should think about sleep after 60. And it is the one that most surprises even well-read people. The glymphatic system I described earlier depends on channels in the membrane of astrocytes, brain support cells, that are controlled by a protein called aquaporin 4. Think of aquaporin 4 as the valve. When the valve is properly positioned, it opens efficiently during sleep, and the cleaning fluid flows through. When the valve is misaligned, the cleaning system is compromised even during sleep. Research published in multiple journals, including work synthesized in a 2020 paper in the journal Frontiers in Neuroscience, showed that as the brain ages, aquaporin 4 channels undergo what is called depolarization. They lose their precise alignment at the astrocyte end feet, the specialized extensions of astrocytes that wrap around blood vessels. In younger brains, these channels are precisely docked like satellite dishes, pointing in exactly the right direction. In older brains, they drift out of alignment. The consequence is extraordinary and almost never discussed outside of specialist neuroscience. Older adults over 60 already have an estimated 40 to 60% reduction in glymphatic efficiency compared to younger adults, purely because of this age-related aquaporin 4 depolarization. Meaning, even on a perfect night's sleep, an older adult's brain is cleaning at less than full capacity. When a nocturnal awakening then shuts down the glymphatic system entirely for 30 or 60 minutes, the older brain is not just missing 1/3 of its cleaning cycle. It is missing the most precious third it has because its overall capacity was already reduced before the awakening began. I had a patient once, a 72-year-old woman, a retired nurse from Busan. She told me, "I sleep 7 hours most nights and I only wake up once or twice." She was proud of her sleep, but when we examined her sleep patterns in detail, that one awakening was typically happening at the critical window of slow-wave sleep, around 2 to 3 hours into the night, which is when the glymphatic cleaning cycle is most active. The loss of that single window, repeated every night for years, was costing her the most productive cleaning hours of her night. When we worked on consolidating her sleep through that window without awakening, her daytime clarity improved noticeably within weeks. She described it as finally feeling rested for the first time in a decade. The fifth thing is related to the norepinephrine oscillations I mentioned earlier, and it goes deeper into the mechanism than most people ever hear. During healthy, uninterrupted non-REM sleep, the locus coeruleus does not go completely silent. It oscillates. It fires and rests in a very slow rhythm, approximately once every 50 seconds. These slow oscillations of norepinephrine during sleep do two things simultaneously. First, new research from 2024, published in Cell Reports, shows that these infraslow norepinephrine oscillations actually model and drive the movement of cerebrospinal fluid through the perivascular channels. In other words, the cleaning of the brain is not passive. It is rhythmically pumped by these quiet, slow oscillations of norepinephrine. When you wake up at night, you are not just interrupting sleep. You are literally breaking the wave pattern that is both cleaning your brain and writing new memories into long-term storage. Second, these same oscillations during non-REM sleep are directly associated with memory consolidation. Research from the Nedergaard group showed that infraslow norepinephrine oscillations during non-REM sleep correlated positively with memory performance the following day. When these oscillations are absent, or when they are interrupted by awakening, memory consolidation is compromised. And here is the additional cruelty for older adults. In brains that are moving toward Alzheimer's pathology, even before any cognitive symptom appears, these infraslow norepinephrine oscillations are already weakened. The Cell Report study showed that brains with amyloid pathology failed to show the healthy increase in norepinephrine oscillatory power after sleep deprivation. Meaning the Alzheimer's process itself damages the system that should recover from nocturnal awakenings. The older and more vulnerable your brain, the less able it is to compensate for interrupted nights. The people who most need undisturbed sleep are the ones whose brains are least able to defend against the consequences of disrupted sleep. Korean medicine has a saying, "The body that most needs rest is the one that finds it hardest to achieve." It is not wisdom without foundation. It is observation passed down across generations. Now I want to spend the final two on what can actually be done, because this conversation should not end with fear. It should end with action. The sixth thing, and this is where ancient observation and modern imaging science finally meet in a satisfying way, is the profound influence of sleep position on glymphatic clearance. This is something that Korean traditional medicine observed empirically for generations, and that Western neuroscience only confirmed in 2015 through magnetic resonance imaging studies of glymphatic flow. When you sleep on your back, face up, the cerebrospinal fluid that carries waste out of the brain must travel against gravity in certain critical pathways. The clearance of amyloid beta and tau from the interstitial space is measurably less efficient in supine sleep than in lateral sleep. And lateral sleep, sleeping on your side, has been shown by Nedergaard's group at the University of Rochester to optimize glymphatic transport. The same channels open more efficiently. The fluid flows more freely. But here is what connects sleep position directly to nocturnal awakenings. And this is the part that surprises most people. Older adults who sleep on their backs are not only less efficient at brain cleaning per hour of sleep, they are also more likely to experience what are called arousal events, micro-awakenings driven by the partial airway obstruction that occurs more easily when lying face up. Many nocturnal awakenings are not random. They are the brain rescuing itself from low oxygen during back sleeping. Each rescue awakening is preceded by a period of shallow breathing, reduced oxygen delivery to the brain, and then a cortisol and norepinephrine spike as the brain fights back to consciousness. So when a patient tells me they wake at 3 in the morning and do not know why, the first question I ask is, what position are you in when you wake? The answer is almost always on the back. Sleeping on the back creates the awakenings and at the same time makes each hour of sleep less effective at cleaning the brain. It is a double loss. The optimal default position is the left lateral position. The left side provides slightly better airway patency, and for most adults it also reduces gastric reflux, which is another underappreciated contributor to nocturnal arousal in people over 60. Traditional Korean sleep medicine advised lateral positions for the elderly for reasons our ancestors articulated in the language of vital flow. Now we can see the same reality on a magnetic resonance imaging scan. I had a patient once, a 63-year-old retired teacher from Daejeon. He was waking 3 to 4 times every night and assumed it was his prostate. He was half right about the timing, because the urge to urinate does peak around 3 to 4 in the morning due to hormonal shifts. But the actual awakening mechanism was driven by airway narrowing during back sleep. When he transitioned to sleeping on his left side, a position we practiced together using a firm pillow placed at his back, his nocturnal awakenings dropped from 3 to 4 per night to 1 or 0 within 3 weeks. His wife confirmed this independently. The prostate issue became easier to manage as well because he was no longer pre-aroused before the urge even built. The seventh thing is what I call the re-entry protocol, and it is the most directly useful piece of information I can give to anyone who wakes up at night. Because the question is not only how do we prevent awakenings, the question is also, once you are awake, how do you minimize the damage and return the brain to its cleaning state as quickly as possible? Here's what most people do when they wake at 3 in the morning. They open their eyes. They look at the clock or the phone. They assess how long until they need to get up. They feel frustrated or anxious about being awake. And then they try to force themselves back to sleep. Every one of those behaviors extends the awakening and delays glymphatic resumption. Looking at a screen even briefly delivers light that suppresses melatonin for 90 minutes or more in the aging brain. Checking the time activates the frontal cortex, the thinking brain, which raises norepinephrine. Anxiety about sleep activates the HPA axis, which releases cortisol, which further suppresses melatonin. And forcing sleep is precisely the cognitive effort that prevents it. What the re-entry protocol requires instead is this. When you notice you are awake, do not open your eyes if you can avoid it. Keep them closed. If you have already opened them, close them deliberately. Orient your body into the lateral position if you are not already there. Do not check the time. Do not reach for a phone. Instead, breathe deliberately. Not the deep, dramatic breathing of a breathing exercise, but a gentle, slow exhale, slightly longer than the inhale. Exhale for approximately 5 or 6 counts. Inhale for 3 or 4. Do not count out loud, even silently. Simply make the exhale the longer breath. This pattern activates the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, through what is called the baroreflex, lowers heart rate and blood pressure. It reduces norepinephrine release in the brain, and it begins the descent back toward the parasympathetic state that enables the brain to return to slow-wave sleep, where the glymphatic cleaning cycle can resume. A study published in the journal Frontiers in Human Neuroscience showed that even a brief period of diaphragmatic exhalation, focused breathing, could measurably reduce salivary cortisol within 15 minutes. That is a physiological shift, not a wishful one. The moment of the awakening is a fork in the road. One path leads to a cascade of cortisol and screen light and frustration that keeps the glymphatic system offline for an hour. The other path, the deliberate exhale, the closed eyes, the lateral position, leads back toward the brain state where cleaning resumes. Korean medicine never separated the mind from the body at night. They understood that the quality of the return to sleep was as important as the sleep itself. Let me bring this all together. Your brain is not broken when it wakes you up at night. The glymphatic system shuts down the moment norepinephrine rises. The locus coeruleus, first site of tau tangles in Alzheimer's disease, is overworked by every awakening and produces toxic enzyme cascades when chronically stressed. Silent white matter lesions accumulate from repeated microspikes in blood pressure with each arousal event. And these invisible lesions carry 5 times the stroke risk. Aquaporin 4 depolarization has already reduced your glymphatic capacity by 40 to 60% simply because you are over 60, making each lost cleaning window more precious than it would be in a younger brain. Infraslow norepinephrine oscillations, the wave pattern that simultaneously pumps brain cleaning fluid and writes memories into storage, are broken each time you wake. Sleeping on your back creates awakenings and reduces cleaning efficiency at the same time. And the first 30 seconds after waking are a decision point that either extends the damage or begins the repair. Health after 60 is not about dramatic change. It is about consistent awareness. Your body wants to heal. We just have to stop interrupting it. Korean medicine has always understood this. The body does not break, it waits. Small habits practiced daily, that is the oldest medicine in the world.
Dr. Henry Lee, thank you. What you have laid out today is not sleep advice in the conventional sense. It is a neurological argument for treating the night with the same seriousness we treat the day. 7 mechanisms, and every single one of them silent. That is what makes this conversation so important. If you found value here, please share this episode with someone over 60 who wakes up at night and thinks nothing of it. The link to the Senior Body Reset After 60 is in the description and in the pinned comment below. We will see you in the next episode. Stay strong, stay curious, and grow old well.